that, you know, you kind of grow up hearing about. Because my family didn't practice Santeria. We didn't have no crystal balls. That was a sublime joke for the kids out there. Hola y'all, welcome back to my channel. It is Michelle. This is Shelly Flowers Reads and Writes, where I talk about all things related to reading and writing. So, I'm not on Twitter. I tend to be delayed in the news that I get about what's happening in the publishing / writing world. I should probably get on Twitter, but it's just a cesspool of foolishness. Case in point, J.K. Rowling and her TERF nonsense. So I debated making this video because I myself am still struggling with this idea of supporting an author's work, but also recognizing that that author will, probably already has said very problematic things in the past and is still saying those problematic things. J.K. Rowling is an excellent example of an author who does this consistently. So I still don't know. You know, for those of you who don't know, J.K. Rowling has dropped in hints here and there over the years that she's a TERF, amongst other things. And for those of you who also don't know, a TERF is a trans exclusionary radical feminist. Trans women are women. Non-binary people will identify how they choose to identify, and trans men are men. I think, just like on a personal level, it makes no difference in my day-to-day life. So I don't understand why, as a cis-het person, I'm gonna sit there and try to tell other people how they should or should not identify their own bodies, okay? Here's what I also know. Not all cisgender women menstruate. So, you know, again, I think when we focus too much on those kinds of things and not on actual systemic issues that trans people face in our world, we get bogged down in irrelevant details that don't actually matter in our day-to-day life. So with all that being said, I did want to start off this video by saying, if you are interested in finding a way to be more intersectional about your activism, I would highly suggest you follow a friend and former colleague of mine named Shea the Scholar on Twitter. They also have an Instagram that they're very active on, although I believe the Instagram is private. But they're definitely out there on Twitter. And they recently released a t-shirt and a sticker, all of the proceeds of which go to the Marsha P. Johnson Institute, which helps support Black and brown queer youth who are oftentimes the most targeted in terms of trans antagonistic and queer antagonistic tendencies. As we all know, Black trans women die at significantly higher rates than any other group of people. I think the average life expectancy for a trans Black person is 35 years. I'm gonna be 32. That's insane. So if you would like to support their cause, I have the links down below for you to do so. It's really important to keep in mind that when we say things like Black Lives Matter, we need to include trans, non-binary, queer people in that conversation. I will say Kat Black, who is a Black trans woman, she's a YouTuber, very prominent in YouTube, I think does a much better job than I ever could of explaining, you know, this issue around J.K. Rowling and her transphobic tendencies. So I'm linking her video down below. I watched it and it really did help me formulate my own ideas. And I think the biggest takeaway I took from her video was like, read another book. You know, I think fandoms can be really problematic because we like to idolize human beings, and human beings are imperfect all the time. I think we do this with political figures as well, and so we need to start using nuance in our reading, in our fandom, in our love of some figure. We need to use nuance and critical thinking and recognize that they are going to say and do things that are harmful, and with that then move in our partaking of whatever they create. So that's like another perspective to this entire issue. So With all that being said, I want to jump into the Gryffindor book tag because I do love the Harry Potter books, and I've also been rereading them with my children. I do see some of the problematic elements in them. So again, it's something I'm trying to work out on my own. Is it worth it to read books by authors that are known to be problematic? There have also been times where people did not realize authors were as problematic as they actually were until they were much older. Dr. Seuss is a great example of this. Roald Dahl is another great example of this. So I don't really know the answer to that. But anyway, while I still work through that myself, here's the Gryffindor book tag. Question 1. What is your favorite Harry Potter book? And I think like most people who were fans of the book as children, my favorite book is obviously number 3, The Prisoner of Azkaban. I just think it is definitely that shift from middle grade to young adult, and it's done so well. Question 2, house colors, a book with red or gold on the cover. Okay, I immediately knew what book I was gonna pick for that particular question. Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. I love these books. These books actually had a lot of representation for me. I'm obviously not a black person, but I am Cuban American, and this book features a lot of Yoruba religion, and Santeria is based off of the Yoruba religion. So I feel like for me, I actually got a lot of representation to see Yemaya and Oya and Chango and all of these figures that, you know, you kind of grow up hearing about. Because my family didn't practice Santeria. We didn't have no crystal balls. That was a sublime joke for the kids out there. But I just loved how those figures were used. It reminded me a lot of the Percy Jackson books in terms of like how this mythology was used, and I really loved it. Question 3. Nearly Headless Nick, a character with a disappointing death. Mariam in A Thousand Splendid Suns, I just think her character got the short end of the stick, to say the least. And then, this is a spoiler, but her death at the end of the book was a really hard pill to swallow. She did some powerful things though, so I think like this is a great example of a book with very complex characters, and I appreciate that for it. Question 4, The Fat Lady, a book that demanded your attention. Okay. Queenie, this book, this cover is stunning. And so here's the story with this book. I was reading Swing Time by Zadie Smith, and I was on an airplane as I was reading it. You can probably tell where I'm going with this story. I left the book on the plane. I hate doing that. And I'm sorry if you hear some background noise. Someone's cutting grass. Hopefully it doesn't get too loud. But after leaving the book on the plane, I was so upset, so I figured, you know what, I'm just gonna treat myself and buy a brand new book. I normally don't buy new books in the airport because they're super expensive, but I walked into a bookshop and I saw this book, and it just was an insta buy for me. I didn't love the book itself. I could definitely tell that this was the author's first book, but I think it was definitely a story that I had never read before, and that is something that's always really impressive to me. So whenever Candace Carty-Williams comes out with another book, I will probably buy it, because I think she has a perspective that is very different from what I've read before, and I'm excited to see how her voice grows and develops over the years. Question 5, Gryffindor Common Room, your favorite cozy spot to read in. That is a really tough one because, as I've talked about in other videos, I do not have like a lot of space in my apartment. We currently live in a 2-bedroom apartment. I'm hoping one day we can buy a house and I can have like my own little office / library / reading nook, but until then, I kind of just go wherever I can. Number 6 is Bravery, a book outside of your comfort zone. This has to be the audiobook that I'm currently listening to, which is The New Confessions of an Economic Hitman. Anyone who knows me knows math is a struggle. I even talked about it when I read Hidden Figures. Like, I really enjoyed that book, but I had a hard time because of a lot of the more math and like technical aspects of it. The same thing's going on with New Confessions of an Economic Hitman. But I'm also like, this book, there's so many layers to it. And what I'm recognizing is that the further I get into my social justice ideology and work, economics has to be part of that platform. It's definitely an area where I need to learn more so I can be more informed in decisions I make about economics. If y'all have any recommendations on books that can help me understand economics in general, different economic theories, the ways in which economics impact our world, the connection between economics and social justice movements, I would love to hear those suggestions, because that's definitely something that I've been thinking about more and more. Next up, number 7, determination. A book that took determination to finish. I got one. This is going to be an unpopular opinion for BookTube, but The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. I read this, I think, in college. My mom's friend actually lent it to me because he saw that I liked fantasy. I think what it is that I like YA fantasy or urban fantasy. High fantasy is just not for me. At least it wasn't back then. I'm currently reading The Mists of Avalon and I enjoy a few parts of that. So maybe it's that I was also too young to read that book when I did. And maybe if I read this now, I would enjoy it more. But to be honest, I don't have very much interest in rereading it. This will probably be a book that I unhaul at some point, because it's not for me. I think I'm also kind of over medieval Europe as the setting for a high fantasy. Now, if it was a high fantasy that was set in like ancient China or in Africa or somewhere within like the Aztec civilization, I could see myself getting into that. But we've just seen it done so many times. And I recognize that Robert Jordan was also a pioneer in that particular respect, but I don't know, man. It's just not for me anymore. Okay, lastly, number 8, Adventurous, a book that took you on a grand adventure. So this book I don't have anymore because I borrowed it from my library, but it is called Around the World in 50 Years by Albert Podell. I think that's how you pronounce his name. I haven't seen anywhere how to pronounce it, so I'm sorry if I mispronounced it. But it's basically about a man who has visited every single country in the world, and he also went back and visited new countries that were formed once he finished his goal, which I think is really interesting and we don't hear a lot of conversation about. So the book itself, I liked parts of it, but there were definitely other parts where you could tell that he was a very privileged white man who kind of just got to do whatever he wanted and never had any issues in terms of being told no, which is kind of crazy. I am a big fan of the Catch Me If You Can. Her name is Jessica Nabongo. She is the first Black woman to visit every single country in the world. It's been documented. She has her Ugandan passport and her American passport. Her story is so fascinating. I think I heard somewhere that she's getting a book deal, so when she releases her book, I definitely want to read that. I would say if you like traveling and you want to know what it's like to have traveled all over the world, that's definitely a book that you should check out. If traveling is not really your thing, you're probably not going to get a lot out of it other than listening to some old white guy talk about how adventurous he is. All right, guys, that is pretty much it for me today. If you feel comfortable doing this tag, I know that the YouTuber who kind of created this tag, I'm going to put her videos down below. She did one for every house. So if you want to tag yourself and do it for your house, you can. But I would also say if you decide to do this tag, look and see if there are any trans specific organizations that you can help bring awareness to, because I think, you know, the more I think about this idea of reading books from problematic authors, the more I realize that, like, if you're gonna do it, I think it's important to also bring in a different perspective on, you know, how to then support the group that this author might be potentially harming. So that's it from me today. If you guys have any advice for me, any feedback from me, feel free to leave that in the comments down below as well. I will say I am a big supporter of trans people, so if you come in the comments with any kind of transphobic nonsense, it will be deleted because I don't tolerate that. I am also a big supporter of the Black Lives Matter movement, so if you come at me with any kind of All Lives Matter nonsense, that comment will also be deleted. Can we just leave people the fuck alone and let people live? Like, it's 2020. Anyway, that's it from me today. If you'd like to follow me on Instagram, Tumblr, and Goodreads, you can find me on those platforms as @ShellyFlowers. If you would like to buy my book, it's a chapbook of poetry, Gwynthel's from the Swamp. You can find the link for purchase down below. I release videos every Wednesday and Sunday, and I hope you guys have an awesome weekend, and please make sure you're taking care of yourself. Self-care is so important. It is not just masks and bubble baths. It is doing some really deep soul searching. It is sleeping. It is eating food that is good for you and healthy. So please make sure you're taking care of yourselves. All right. Ciao, y'all.